Good day, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm your host, Brian Doyle, and I'm excited about today's session. This is a young rising star in our community that I've gotten to know a little bit and got to actually meet for the first time as we were both out at GTIA last week. And I'm really excited to have a conversation with him because he's a smart gentleman who's really kind of bringing a new level of thought leadership with a different, fresh perspective to the marketplace. So with that said, I want to introduce Josh Hohbein from centrexIT. Hey, Josh, how you doing this morning?
Good. That's one heck of an introduction. Now I got to live up to the hype here.
You'll be fine, man. I've got to know Josh a little bit through some other means, prior to this, but then, all of a sudden I'm looking at my feed and watching this guy get very active very quickly within the community. And I'm like, hey, I know that guy, and he's a pretty smart dude, but he used to sit kind of silently in the back in some of the meetings we were jointly a part of until called upon. So, most of the smart guys, that's what happens. And, I'm really excited to have Josh join us today. Josh, people like to get to know the folks that I'm talking to, especially if they don't know them. Maybe tell folks a little bit about your background and how you found yourself into the wild world of MSP.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a life-defining moment almost, as weird as it sounds. But my whole life has either been in kind of restaurant or tech. And I was a manager of a call center where I started just doing tech support for internet service provider out of Arizona. And that call center closed, so I was like trying to do a whole bunch of things. I mean, I was doing a direct support professional working with developmentally disabled to, delivering pizzas and papers. And at the time, video games is a pretty good hobby. So at the video game store, there was like this ad for this like league, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. It's like a bowling league, but instead you play video games. And joined that, loved it, got involved with it, became one of the kind of the co-owners of it, and the person who started it worked at an MSP that was half MSP, half website design, and they needed an IT person. And I was like, well, I'm in tech. Like I did Geek Squad, I did the call center. So got hired on as a junior sysadmin for this MSP and was there for 5 years. Went to the restaurant, back to the restaurant side where I did a bunch of restaurant management stuff. And then got a job at a second MSP doing, just network engineer stuff. Became a cloud solutions architect, and then eventually got into the cyber side, where I am now the manager of cybersecurity and automation at centrexIT.
Awesome. And those backstories are great, but there's a couple things that I hear in that narrative that I hear often from folks that are in our line of work. They all came from a service industry, and they were all built to serve, right? I think, I think all of us are obviously looking to earn a living and make some money in this, but I think a big part of the passion is working with others, and it's not uncommon. My backstory before I got into tech was I was a bartender for almost 6 years going through college, and lo and behold, here I sit now as an IT guy. And I think a lot of that's because you have to learn how to deal with the good, the bad, and the ugly as part of that world
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah. I one of my favorite talks that I give, I've given it a couple conferences, and I have an empath course on it, is how to look at your MSP through the lens of a restaurant. Because the more especially if you've been in retail or restaurant, the more you actually look at it, the comparisons are the same. Right? I'll go through like a day in the life, and then I'll change some words around, and it's like it's the same thing, guys. We're providing a service. Instead of serving beer, we're fixing computers.
And the biggest thing is you've always got to keep a pleasant face with the customer and keep your composure, even when there's moments where you want to lose it.
Yeah.
I know certainly in the restaurant world, I wanted to lose it plenty of times. In the IT world, at least when you feel like you're going to lose it, there's a little bit more of a professional air to it.
Yeah, you can go off camera or something, and yeah, it's a little different from having to run a hectic kitchen. That's
but
come on.
but yeah, no, there's incredible parallels. And I think it is something that, when you start looking at what makes a good employee or a good, especially on the technical side, right? Because there's a little bit of difference between the business side and the technical side and the demeanor. I think all the qualities that somebody that works in the restaurant world does translate. You have to have patience. You have to have the ability to really keep track of many things and multitask at any time, right? Anybody that's waited a table with a section during the weed moments knows what it's like to be juggling different things. Or if you're working on the line cook, how many different things you're cooking at the same time that all have to be done at different times. It's crazy. And I think there's a lot of that feeling when you come into IT. There's a lot of balls to juggle.
Oh yeah, prioritization. I mean, really, like incident response too is like every day in a restaurant is an incident. Like it's something's going wrong or it's a crazy rush, and all of those skills are transferable over, and the communication is a huge one too. For example, that's where a lot of stuff breaks down in the MSP is it does come down to the communication. So if you think at a restaurant, you're sitting at a table and your food's taking a while and your server's nowhere to be found, and you're like, man, this sucks. Like they forgot about me. Where's my food? And it comes out, and the food at that point, like you're already ticked off. Like so, the food can be incredible, but your experience is ruined, right? But if that server comes over and is like, hey, we're really sorry, kitchen's behind, it'll come out soon, or can I get you something to snack on in the meantime? Make sure that you're taken care of. It doesn't change the fact that the food is late and it's going to come out 10 minutes later, but your experience is that much better, right? Go to the MSP world. I mean, that's the same thing. You leave a ticket open for a day or two. Maybe you're working on it in the back end, but to the customer, it's like, did you forget about me? What's going on? And then they get ticked off. But even if you're saying, hey, we're still working on this or there's no update, it makes a big difference.
I mean, when things go into the void, it's definitely difficult, right? And you're spot on. I mean, look, the food could be great, everything like you said, but the waiter often makes the experience. And it's the same thing, think about where the biggest point of activity for our customers traditionally is. It's at the help desk level. And if they're getting good service there, they judge us well.
Absolutely.
And if they're not, then all of a sudden the whole company's reputation can tank, right? So it is a happy balance keeping that going. And, communication is the number one thing, right? Just all you got to do is put out a little note that says, hey, we haven't forgot about you. We're still working on the issue, digging in a little bit deeper. Bigger problem we thought it was, that kind of thing. And at least people now have something to run back. I always say, in the world of our customers, it trickles downhill. If somebody's asking you, it's because somebody's asking them. And if they don't have a response, they're feeling the heat. We got to make it easy so they're not feeling the heat.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's transition a little bit into what you're doing on the day to day. So I know you've got your hands both in the security world and the emerging AI story that's going on over at Centrix. Let's talk a little bit about something we were chatting about before the call. How to align a framework when no one cares, or you had a much more elegant way of putting it, which you're free to share in terms of that for your speeches. But, it's true. Most customers, if they're not regulated, they do not care. So I'd love to get your thoughts.
Well, even from the MSP side, right? And there's a talk coming up at MSP GeekCon, and kind of use a little bit more colorful language, but like your clients don't give a shit about frameworks, and that's the honest truth. It sounds a little harsh, but like unless they're in a regulated industry, it doesn't matter. Right? They just again want you to make sure that their stuff works, they're secure, and all of that. So this kind of came to be in my previous MSP. So when I said I was doing a lot of cloud solutions, I learned how to do like the Microsoft, the Azure stuff. We had a large client where I was assigned like the Azure security, which was really cool. But eventually that client went more internal. So even though I had been there for like a year, almost being their employee, now I found myself, well, I've already migrated all of these clients into Exchange Online, did all the SharePoint. Like the target market for that was smaller, kind of mom and pop, like the 2 to 20 outside of that large client. So I was like, well, they don't need Azure services, so I need to stay relevant here. What are we doing? And all of these clients need security. So I started looking at like Microsoft Zero Trust and tenant hardening, things like that. But I kind of really went to the basics over, okay, cyber insurance is becoming a thing. What are their requirements? And trying to come up with a package. And this is where I leaned really a lot on my restaurant, the general manager skills is you come up with something new. And now I worked for a Buffalo Wild Wings, so I couldn't just make something like a new product, right? But when you come up with an idea and you work with the franchise office and all of this, you can't just say, hey, this is a good idea. You have to go end to end, right? So you have to have the idea, and then you have to come up with product, packaging, go to market, like how you work with the marketing to sell it, how teaching people how to sell it, post support, right? So came up with this whole thing, and didn't get much traction there. So that's again when I was brought over to here, and kind of the same thing, and it's been great. So really the idea behind it, and it evolved even more than I originally had in my head, but taking CIS requirements and cyber insurance requirements and just overall kind of best practices standards, and making like a simplified framework made easy. Because again, your clients, like if you try to take them through CIS and say, hey, we're going to follow these 146 controls and go through this, like they don't care. But if you can simplify it, hey, cyber insurance is asking these things. You fill out, the client, fill out a cyber insurance form. They're going to ask you, 40 different questions, maybe, less. But like all of these things are going to pop up on there. So we're just going to make it simple. Like by partnering with us, these are the tools and services you get. But there are some things that you have to take the responsibility on. So it's a 5-stage framework that really takes those, breaks it down, simplifies it. And you can see how it matures over time. Like in stage 1, are you doing backups? You have 3, 2, 1 backups. But in stage 3, okay, no, are you testing those? So you get the foundation and then you build off of the foundation. And any tool that we have, any service that we offer from the security side aligns to that. So it's pretty easy to kind of look to see, hey, doing a risk assessment, this is where the client was. This is the controls they had, the ones they didn't have. And now we have projects and services that we can recommend to get them to the next level. And from the client, they see, okay, well, these are the things that I need to get, the next step to operationally and securely. This is the next things that we need to budget for over the next, year or two. And then you can look back, well, this is where we were, this is where we are now, this is future looking. So it really just makes it a lot simpler than having to get really into the weeds over, okay, we need to follow 8.3 and 12.6 and all of this.
And I think that's a great approach, right? If you can actually come to the customer, get them to subscribe to your traditional stack, and then show them, hey, really 3/4 of this is taken care of. Now this is where we need you to step in. First of all, the task doesn't feel as daunting. Second of all, you're showing value because you're showing them, hey, I already got you prepped up for the majority of this. Now it's where the people, process, and policies conversations really need to come into play. And then putting this simple 5-step framework behind it, makes it understandable for most end users, because the reality is frameworks are good even if you're not regulatory compliant, because just like you said, cyber insurability, we've talked here on the show about the fact that 44% of claims get rejected in whole or in part. And again, nobody was maliciously lying on their applications. They thought they had the right answers. They didn't realize what wasn't actually covered.
Yeah,
and a framework helps you tighten that.
And the beautiful part about it too is if you do have clients that are regulatory, you can look at this and you're meeting CIS stuff on the back end, like how you as the MSP are meeting this and performing the services. It does align and meet. So it's like, okay, well now you have FTC, you have HIPAA, whatever. So it's like, cool. Well, we need to get you to level 4, and then there are specific controls. But we're at least the goal is to just get a good base level of cyber maturity, and then you can get into the specifics. So really it works for any client, it works internally, and it really just, it simplifies it. You're not just buying whatever shiny tool that you see. It's okay, each tool has a purpose, each service has a purpose, and you can see what gaps you have, right? Okay, well maybe we can't offer that, so we need to partner with an MSSP or some sort of a VCIO, VCISO consulting or something to really get the full gambit of security and compliance that you would need to align to these.
Yep. Awesome. So, that's a little bit of how you guys are approaching the market. I think you were talking a little bit about kind of the challenges or at least some of the things that you encountered in building a security platform. You want to dive a little bit into that conversation?
I mean, yeah, the one of the biggest challenges, I think, what is just kind of the term in the saturation might not be the best word, but there's a lot of companies who, or even vendors who are like, hey, we sell security, but what does that mean? There was a statistic that was released, kind of a state of the channel at CCF, which is the GTIA conference, and only 17%. So they had six. Sorry, let me back up. They had 6 categories of like different security offerings, and all of those would go into what makes a full complete security stack, and it's like your data protection, identity, cloud security, things like that. And 17% said that we only offer one or two, but even though you offer that, you still say, hey, we offer cybersecurity and do this. And it was 19% that do all 5 to 6, and then the rest, the vast majority, were only 3 to 4. So it's just kind of the difficulty of like, well, what do you mean when you're providing cyber? Like, what does this mean? Am I protected? And all of this. It's kind of just that the vagueness of it, and the sheer amount of tools and offerings that are out there. Preventing overlap is another one too, right? When you're choosing your tools, like you have all of these features, you try to get the single pane of glass, and then it overlaps, but it might not do this one the best, right? So you have your framework, which is great, and you're like, okay, well, these are the controls I need the tools to help me achieve. So, kind of how do you do that? And this one can kind of cover this one, but,
Yep.
we need another one to supplement.
Right. And the tool vendor, the vendors are trying to drive more value into their products. So they're trying to cross over into a couple different lanes in order to help reduce costs for our end users. But the truth is, sometimes some tools are more purpose built for certain things, and you do need to make those adaptations. I've always, there's always cost concerns when people are doing the stack. And right now there's this big push for, lean up your stack and do that. But I've always come from the ilk when I was an MSP, the stack is part of my cost base. So the key is, how do I make sure that my pricing reflects what I need to have in the back office in order to support it and still be profitable? And I think that's an approach that the smarter MSPs are taking. It's, I don't want to consolidate the tools. Yes, I want to have a set of standards so I can train everybody across the board and make sure that we're providing a very quality security service at the right level. But I do need the tools that I need in order to provide the services we do at scale. And if that means another few hundred extra bucks here and another $1,000 there, again, I don't want to diminish those numbers, but build it into your pricing, right? Make sure you get it and that you can answer the bell when you need to. We hope there's very few incident responses, right, that we have to attend to. But when there is one, we want to make sure we have everything we need for communication, especially out of band, in moments. And if that means they're sitting idly, as long as I'm finding a way to pay for them and make a little profit on top, it shouldn't be a problem.
Absolutely.
So what other things are you active in? We're getting near the end of our time. I want to kind of make sure that you have time to share anything else that you want to today. What are some of the other things you're finding yourself getting active in? We were talking a little bit about AI, and you're kind of spearheading that for your organization, or at least a big part of spearheading that. What are some of the things that you're doing for fun in the world of IT, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel AI right now for a lot of us is a hobby we need to monetize.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the entire time, here I've kind of learned, but the dev side of things, and basically I'm not a developer, right? So kind of learning that, some of the cool things that you can do with Lovable, making like web apps and stuff like just like that within minutes. It's like, oh, this is really cool. But the security side in me already knows, like, I am not a developer. I have no idea if this is secure at all. So thankfully we are fortunate enough to have a couple devs internally here. So working with them on like, okay, I understand the security side of it. Like, this can't be public facing. Like, we need to secure it. So coming up with what that looks like from the dev flow. So, we are working on automating a lot of things internally. Again, going back to restaurant days, the figuring out your cost of goods, and increasing efficiency was one of, that's your primary job when you're a kitchen manager, general manager, looking at, okay, well, you can only sell boneless wings for so much amount of money, right? So we need to make delivering those boneless wings as efficient as possible. So same thing here, right? We have our costs, and how can we be more efficient? What things can we standardize, documenting the processes? So we're doing a lot of that internally to try to increase our proactivity, our efficiency, so we can be more people focused. We can spend more time, face to face with the client, and removing some of that tedious work. And we're translating some of that stuff to our clients as well. So figuring out kind of how that looks like as far as a project and post-project support. And it's been really fun of building those solutions. I tell my devs at least once a week that they're wizards, because it's like, this was a process and an idea, and now it looks like amazing and it works. And I don't understand it, but it's getting done.
There, right? I feel the same way as a guy that works with devs, and I'm like, it's amazing that I can just think of something and put it in a PowerPoint for you, and then lo and behold, it shows up. But I also want to say I'm glad you said boneless wings instead of bone-in wings, because it seems like there's no end to the cost on those these days. They'll charge almost
Oh yeah.
anything for that, and that is something that went from 50-cent wings to a $20 for 12. So the world is a changing, and AI is a perfect example of how it's changing in our world.
For sure. But, outside of that, being involved in IR games with Bob Miller has been a lot of fun. Incident response is something that I do enjoy. Well, it sounds weird, but like being is, again, my time in the restaurant, like being cool under pressure, knowing what to do translates pretty well. And it's something that not a lot of MSPs or clients are practicing. So it's extremely important because there's so much that can go wrong in these, and it's such a critical time. And take whatever your favorite sports team is. Like, I'm a big hockey and football guy. The Colorado Avalanche just don't go out on game day without having a plan and practice, and we really need to look at this the same way, right? And having that. So doing the IR games with Bob Miller has been great. We do a free game the last Friday of every month. We've done a couple live streams where we try to simulate as best as we can an incident, and it's really more tactical. There are some great tabletop solutions, backdoors and breaches, for example, from Black Hills, that get into the technical side of it. But that's such a small part of these incidences. A lot of it is the business solution, like what the business decisions of what needs to happen, of how you're making payroll, how you're handling certain things that come up, right? You get a sales guy who might work off a commission from the client side of things, and they didn't cause the incident at all, but now you've lost a considerable book of business, and you're potentially losing your top sales guy. They're looking at you like, hey, none of this is my fault, but I have bills to pay. Like, how am I going to pay? I'm making commission, and you as the owner will have to make that decision. So those are the kind of things that we put the fire to you and really make you think, so that way you can get the plan out ahead of it. So it's been a lot of...
So many little things to consider once an incident happens that has nothing to do with fixing the incident, right? That one, I think classically, most engineers at least have an idea of how to contain and eradicate. Timing's always the question. Stress being a force multiplier can definitely slow or enhance things. But it's all those communication levels, and when do you have to get the authorities into play, and when do you hit the lawyer, and almost immediately you better be calling the cyber insurer, right? So there's so many steps that go into an incident response, both technical and administrative. And then the ripple effect is exactly what you talk about: the commissionable sales rep, the customers that we lose, the reputation in the industry, and how long it'll take us to get sales inertia again. Can we weather that storm? How deep will we have to go into the hole? Do we need to borrow? There are so many things to consider. And I you, Bob, and others that are bringing this, problem to light in the marketplace, it's huge, because I don't think a lot of people are thinking. I think we all want to kind of go like ostriches, right? Put our head in the sand and hope it doesn't happen to us. But I ran data centers, and you never know. It could be the craziest thing. We had an outage because our UPS is kicked out, our generator went on, the ATF switch failed, and we were stuck in between. And eventually, we had to call our customers, letting them know our ATF failed, and we will be your servers will be offline somewhere in the next 37 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the UPSs die, unless we can find something there. And they're like, well, just pull the switch. I'm like, nope, because people can die that way. And it was one of the worst calls I ever had to make in my life. But most people certainly understood that they didn't want people taking risks. And there was a lot of fallout that went with it, but we never could have imagined a scenario like that. And that's the problem. You got to plan for the unexpected, and those games are a great way to do so.
Well, and the more you do, the more you practice them, then the more you are prepared for them. Like, hey, I've seen this. Like, I've talked to other MSPs. This is how they would deal with it. We have our internal strategy, and it's still stressful. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot less stressful when you know exactly what to do and you practice it, and it almost becomes second nature.
I think the perfect thing there is when you look at those games, especially ones that have timed elements to it, they simulate at least some element of the stress. And if you're feeling that stress right there, then times it by 3 and know that's what real life's going to be like.
Yep, that's how ours is, man. It's a relentless time clock down. You only have so many times to do what you need to do to make the decision to allocate. So, yeah, That was like the first one I played was the second ever game that they did, and I was like, holy crap, this is the best simulation that I've ever seen. Like, how can I be a part of this and help it? So, I love doing it.
Well, Josh, we're going to wrap up now. I want to thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate you spending some time with me and definitely having fun watching you share what you're learning and share with the community. Keep doing that. Kudos, man. It's folks like you that are really helping others that are more in listener mode than active mode out there on social. Really understand what's changing within the community, and I wish you the best. Folks, if you want to reach Josh, we will be including his LinkedIn link down in the show notes, both on YouTube, ring that bell, subscribe, and anywhere that you get your podcast as well. He's a go-giver. Reach out to him. He'll be happy to reply back to you. Get to know him because he's definitely one of the growing, emerging leaders in our industry. And Josh, again, I want to thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
All right, everybody. We'll see you again next Tuesday. Take care.